Well, then, I do hope you're all well. Buckle up and get ready for this absolute car crash of a cross-party select committee meeting for asylum and immigration, and the topic of conversation was about this Rwanda Agreement. In the hot seat was Tory MP for Corby, Tom Persglove. Remember him who was Clint in the opposition last week while Pretty Patel was getting her ass handed to her. And in this video he's been asked questions about two fronts of this ridiculous Rwanda agreement. An agreement he's incredibly shifty about what model did they base this turd of an agreement on, and also how much of the public money is going to be used on this turd sandwich. Now, the person holding our depth, Tom Persglove, is the new chairperson for the cross-party select committee. Labour MP for Hull North, Diana Johnson, and to say she didn't waste any time easing her way into her new post is an understatement. Enjoy.
Well, good morning, and can I welcome the Minister Tom Persglove MP in the Home Office, Minister in the Home Office, to this committee hearing this morning, and also Dan Hobbs, Director of Asylum Protection and Enforcement at the Home Office. We're very grateful for you both attending this morning, and we want to look specifically today at the announcement made last month around the UK-Rwanda Partnership Agreement concerning asylum seekers. We are going to move on to specific questions about the policy, but I just wanted to start with the actual announcement and the way it was made. So the announcement was made on the 14th of April, which was just at the start of the PERDA period for the local elections on May the 5th.
Coincidence? Don't think so.
But I just wondered, Minister, if you were able to enlighten us. The exchange of letters between the Permanent Secretary and the Home Secretary took place on the 13th of April, just the day before, and that was concerning the ministerial direction that the Permanent Secretary saw from the Home Secretary. It all seemed very late in the day if the announcement was going to be made on the 14th of April. I just wonder, could you just explain why was the rush to get...
Well, that noise was Tom Persglove's brain just fell on the floor.
The policy out, and particularly with no detail.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman, firstly for the invitation to appear before the committee this morning. Can I just congratulate you on your appointment to the chair, and of course it's a privilege to be here and to give evidence on this important issue. Do
you think the buttering up worked for him? Not on your Nelly.
Let me just set this in some perspective that, of course, as a government, we've been consistently clear that we can't continue to have people putting their lives in the hands of evil criminal gangs, paying money to those evil criminal gangs to facilitate these crossings. And we have said that we will strain every sinew to put a stop to that evil criminality. And I would argue that it was right that at the first opportunity that we had to sign this new partnership, that we took that opportunity to do that, because every day that passes where that doesn't happen is a day where lives can potentially be lost in the Channel, and we wanted to waste no opportunity in cracking on and getting on with delivering this partnership. The partnership is complex, of course, and there has been intensive negotiation and discussion around that over the course of the last few months. Those negotiations concluded, and at that point we're in a position to get on and sign it, and that is precisely why we acted in the way that we did, wasting no opportunity to do that.
There was no
Now, before we continue, just look at them chairs pretty close. As this International Select Committee meeting goes on, them chairs do tend to get further and further apart. And you'll understand why. Why would you want to be associated with this absolute plant pot?
Detail available, was there? I mean, it was the BBC, the Telegraph, the Times that all got briefed on what they thought the policy was, which none of that detail was available to Parliament, to MPs to look at. And I noticed that it was only on Monday of this week that the Home Office actually produced documents setting out the details of the policy. Because you'll understand there was a lot of concern, and a lot of the charities that work with asylum seekers and refugees in this country have raised the problem that by setting that announcement on the 14th of April with no proper detail, you caused a lot of distress and upset with people. For example, in today's media round, there's reference to a Rwandan asylum seeker in this country who heard that announcement and thought that would mean he would be sent back to Rwanda. So what I don't understand is, why did you make that announcement on the 14th with no detail about actually how this policy would work? Why has it taken you 3 weeks to produce the detail?
Well, you will note that, of course, the announcement was made as part of a wider package of measures that the Prime Minister set out in Kent, and of course the Home Secretary was in Rwanda at the same time and was able to announce this policy.
That's the issue.
Well, what has happened is we have taken great care to make sure that the detail underpinning this policy has been made available as far as we are able, taking into account, of course, that what we don't want to do, and I think you recognise why this is important, is to not do anything that aids these evil criminal gangs to exploit vulnerable people. And it's right that we tread carefully in delivering the detail of the policy in a way that is sensitive to that and that doesn't support that sort of criminality that is so egregious and unacceptable.
I understand what you're saying, but the 3 weeks has caused problems for asylum seekers in this country, concern, and it just seems to us that Parliament should have had that detail when the announcement was made. And the other point I just wanted to raise with you is about Wendy Williams and her review of how the Home Office operates. One of the things she was very clear about was the Home Office failure in the past to always look at the face behind the case. And this is again illustrative of that failure to understand that this is about individuals, about people. By making these announcements, giving no detail, you set lots of hairs running that it's taken you 3 weeks to actually come up with the details.
So what I would say is that, of course, the Home Secretary made a statement to Parliament at the first available opportunity a few days after the announcement was made.
Wasn't it an urgent question?
Well, I think it's fair to say as well that I am probably one of the ministers certainly in the top 5 in terms of appearing at the dispatch box in the House to be questioned prior to prorogation on a whole range of matters, and there are members of this committee who asked me questions during the passage of the Nationality and Borders Act about quite right too, and I appreciate that opportunity, which is why I was delighted to accept your invitation to appear here, because I think parliamentary scrutiny is important, which is why the House had the detail set out for them. The opportunity to ask questions was made available, and I would argue actually that this point around the uncertainty, I think, is absolutely outweighed by the fact that at the moment what we have is people making these dangerous crossings that put lives at risk, as we saw in November. But it's materially important, and we shouldn't waste an opportunity to shut that criminality down.
We understand that. The problem I've got with this is the process and about providing information in a timely way when announcements are made. That's my issue. So I just wondered if we could just move on. I just want to be very clear now about the evidence base that you have used to make the policy announcement. And I know that the idea is that you want to deter people, smugglers, from coming across, particularly across the channel in small boats. But I just wonder, could you just explain to the committee what the evidence base is that the policy you've put forward will work?
What I would say...
Good luck with that. What I found funny was when he talked about scrutiny and said it with a straight face. I just nearly fell out of my chair laughing.
Is that, of course, what we've been doing through the new plan for immigration is introducing wide-ranging reforms to fix the broken asylum system, of which this is an addition. I would argue that it is a welcome addition that will help us to deter these dangerous journeys of the English Channel in particular by severing the link between individuals paying evil criminal gangs, making those crossings, and of course these individuals responsible for facilitating these crossings have no regard as to whether those individuals arrive here safely or not, and then thinking that those individuals will remain in the United Kingdom for an extensive length of time. There is no one single intervention that will resolve the issues that we are grappling with. I've been consistently clear about this. It is, of course, a new policy. This is a world first in terms of this economic and migration partnership that we've agreed with Rwanda. I doubt that it will be the last of those sorts of agreements that are reached involving countries around the world. But I genuinely do believe that there will be a deterrent effect. It is difficult to quantify that at this stage. You read conflicting media reports of individuals being interviewed, for example, by the media in Calais, some of whom say they're not going to make the journeys, some say that they are still going to make those journeys. It's important just to set this in the context too, that there are individuals, for example, who've not yet made crossings, who've already paid criminal gangs, so there is already that investment been made. But I do believe that in the fullness of time this will make a difference.
Okay, so I'm still not really clear. What modelling have you done then to actually give you the evidence base for this decision?
So this is a new and untested policy
But
at this
you must
point
have
in time.
modelled this.
Well, one thing I would say, and it's worth actually going back through the Hansard, for example, of the Nationality and Borders Bill Committee, where George Brandis set out, for example, the difference that he believed the approach that they took made in terms of dealing with this in Australia.
So yeah, okay, we're going to come on to Australia. We have some specific questions, but what I'm interested in, what the modelling that you've done in terms of the effectiveness of this policy, what modelling have you done?
Well, in some ways, you yourself alluded to in your opening questions the fact that this has added a level of uncertainty to migrants choosing to make these journeys. The fact that the uncertainty that you spoke about, in a way, speaks to the uncertainty that...
Tom, these migrants that you were talking about are already here, you tit.
...that this has now introduced. What this is doing is ending people making those journeys and thinking that there is a very significant chance of them remaining in the United Kingdom for a significant length of time. Doing nothing is not an option.
No one's
Inaction is
suggesting
not
it is,
acceptable.
Minister. I'm just trying to understand the basis of the decision that the government have made, the modelling. If you've not done any modelling, please just tell us.
It is whole system change. What you've seen is conflicting accounts from different people as to whether they believe in their particular circumstances this will make a difference. And I do think that in the fullness of time we will see this policy as part of the wider package that we're introducing really shift the dynamic. Okay. What is absolutely clear is that we couldn't continue with the status quo.
Okay, Mr. Hobbs, are you able to help? Is there some modelling to actually underpin?
I think what Diana Shepherd is saying, Tom, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. Who give you this job? You're fucking useless.
This policy.
As I think the Minister said, we did look at where other countries have done this. Australia, as part of their wider package of their Sovereign Borders programme, did it. They've had no illegal maritime crossings since 2014. So there is evidence out there that this, as part of a wider package, which is set out as part of the new plan, is part of that. And obviously, understanding human behaviour and drivers is extremely complex. So understanding individual interventions is very complex and difficult. But you can model the difference if it had a 10% impact or if it had a 40% impact in terms of flow.
You're saying there is some modelling we can see?
Well, no, you can do some assumption modelling as part of evidence to see whether it and to assess numbers, but defining the individual impact and the individual decisions of migrants is extremely complicated.
Okay,
and I think that's what the accounting officer...
But I do think it's only
logical.
It's only logical to assert that if you cut off the business model of these evil criminal gangs, that will materially make a difference in terms of people making these crossings.
Okay, right. Well, it seems like there isn't any modelling that you can share with us. This is all just looking at what happens in Australia and making some assumptions and thinking that might happen here. That's what you seem
I'd be delighted
saying.
to hear an alternative. I mean, one of the things that I'm always frustrated by is the sort of criticism that we see and the lack of alternative that's put forward.
Is that the first sign of a strop, Tom?
Of the decision that you've made in the Home Office. What is the modelling that you've done? I just want to move on to one other question and then I'm going to bring Simon Fell in. So this is about the Home Office have stated the cost per person relocated to Rwanda will be approximately the same as the cost of processing a person in the UK. And I just wondered, could you tell us what that figure is, please? And could you also tell me what the evidence base is for that figure?
So the approximate figure of processing a case within our asylum system is around £12,000 an individual.
You say that head straight down. Well, when she asked the question, clear my throat, I did really want to answer this, and then watch his expression after, it's priceless.
And that's the figure that you're saying it will cost to process someone in Rwanda?
So what we've said is that we will make contributions to the Rwandan government similar to those that we are spending on processing claims here in the United Kingdom. Now that's important because we think that it's right that this is done properly, that there is that proper wraparound support provided. You'll recognise that this is an economic development and migration partnership. We think it's right that we support jobs, that we support skills, that we support proper integration. But in terms of actual processing costs, what we will be doing is making contributions akin to those that we are currently spending in the United Kingdom at present. And you'll recognise, Madam Chairman, that we are spending nearly £5 million a day in the asylum system at the moment on hotel accommodation. That is not sustainable. If we stand back and do nothing, those costs will continue to grow.
So £12,000 per individual processing cost. You're giving £120 million upfront to the Rwandan government without anybody arriving. They get £120 million, then £12,000 per person processed. And then I also saw in the briefing material from the Home Office that there's an additional cost because you'll support people for 5 years if their asylum claim is successful. So there will be an additional cost you'll be paying on top of the 12,000. Is that right?
So we will be, as I say, paying sums of money that are similar to those that it would cost us to deal with those cases within our asylum system. Now, of course, because this will have the deterrent effect that we believe it will have, that should help us to get costs under control in the longer term, because the deterrent effect should mean that fewer people then make those journeys, which will, of course, then bring the overall cost down within the system.
So do you have some modelling around that, around the figures? If you're saying that you think that the number of people will decline because of this, the deterrent effect, are you saying that you've got some figures about what the costs will be?
So I would refer the committee back to the earlier answers that I've made on this. But what is absolutely apparent to me is that if we don't intervene and we just continue as we are with the status quo, those costs will just continue to grow. We will be spending more than £5 million a day on asylum accommodation. And what I can't do is get into the detailed costings, and that is because there is a respect that needs to be shown to the partnership that we have with the Rwandan government, and that funding arrangement is treated as confidential. But of course, the committee and parliamentarians and people across the country will have the opportunity to look at Home Office accounts in due course, where detail will be set out in the usual way.
OK, I'm going to move on to Simon Fell.
Wow, if you think that were bad, just you wait till SNP MP Stuart MacDonald gets stuck into this turd sandwich of an agreement, and that's in the next video. So I shall leave the video here, and until the next time, buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride. So I shall bid you farewell and take care.